Hello students, welcome to ICE Baba. In this session, we are going to discuss some important topics of geography, which is very important from 2024 mains perspective. This series is very similar to the series that we did in the last year, wherein as per our expectation, a lot of questions had come from our lecture. And our effort is that this year too, many of our questions or the topics that we are teaching should be reflected in your mains question paper. In geography, some important dynamic topics should be covered, which is frequently in the news from the last 1.5 years. And on the basis of analysis of previous year's question paper, and the recent trend of last 1.5 years, we have come to some important topics. Here in geography, river up and the river flooding is frequently in the news. Recently, World Bank had published a report talking about the declining water table in the rivers of the India, along with that of the aquifers declining down. Also, in different parts of the world, many important rivers are drying up. The recently Central Water Commission have come up with the statement saying that 13 rivers in the India, the eastern coast, have dried up in the month of April-May. So river drying up is very much in the news, and we are expecting this question to come in this year's exam. As such, with respect to the rivers, rivers related to the drainage system related, you must have come across in the prelims also. And river related question is asked in the mains also, and some important dimensions of the river is the pollution, drying up of the rivers, flooding, water sharing, and river interlinking. Here in the context of river pollution, this should be covered in detail in the environment. Water sharing and the dispute arising out of it should be covered in the polity. Here in this case, drying up of the rivers, flooding the rivers, and their solution in the form of river interlinking will be covered. So in the recent years, the rivers in the case of the India and the rivers across the world is facing the dry. Important rivers like Euphrates and Tigris have dried up to a considerable extent, stated by the World Bank. And 8 major rivers in the world, as per National Geographic Channel, is on the verge of extinction. 8 major rivers. Okay, so the major rivers are the one around which the ancient and the medieval civilization had started. So drying up of the rivers is not only going to affect the human civilization, it is also going to affect the groundwater table. This would also affect the aquatic ecosystems, and along with that, the forest, the delta, everything will be affected. So here in this analyzing the previous year's question paper of the water resources, especially that of the rivers, is very important. Here you have a topic known as the water resources, in which a common set of the question that is seen is crisis of the availability and access to fresh water, and river water is one of the fresh water. Melting of the Himalayan glaciers and its impact upon the water resource, water stress and how does it differ regionally, the ideal solution of depleting groundwater. This is in the context of groundwater, so we will cover this water resource also as a separate topic, wherein we will cover the groundwater table and overall water as a resource. In this session, we are talking about river drying. Okay. Here for the water conservation, water harvesting, okay, harvesting water resources and the conservation and the impact of the climate change upon the water. So these are the important dimensions on the water overall. Okay, and we should cover the water as an overall topic, starting with drying up of rivers. So when the question comes with respect to the drying up the rivers in the introduction, what can be emphasized is the current affair aspects. For example, you can see here with respect to this World Bank, what does the World Bank say about the drying up of the rivers in the case of the India, that the Indian aquifers will be in a critical position in the next 20 years. So this is very much alarming that in the next 20 years our aquifers wherein the groundwater is stored is going to be in a very critical position, and this in turn is going to affect the river. So how groundwater is affecting the surface water? Okay, we will try to understand that. And if you want to start with this introduction wherein the Indian organization talking something about the river water, so you can start by quoting the Central Water Commission statement. It says that at least 13 east flowing rivers between Mahanadi to Pennar have dried up, and this statement was given in the month of April 2024, and the peak season of the summer was yet to come, and these rivers dried up before the peak season. Okay, so this was very much alarming. Another introduction can be given in the form of World Economic Statement with respect to drying up of the rivers. That the rivers are drying in the various parts of the world as climate change makes differences in water distribution increasingly stark. So you can start with any of these as an introduction. If not in the introduction, then these authentic statement can be used in writing your conclusion also. When it comes to the main body part, you have to start with the causes. What are the various multidimensional causes of drying up of the rivers? What will be the impact of drying up of the rivers? What are the various solutions available? These solutions should be first with respect to what are the government solutions available. Then the additional measures can be given. Okay, finally followed by the conclusion. Here, with respect to the drying up of the river, the causes is excessive irrigation. In the case of India, one of the major problem with respect to the irrigation is we are growing more of water intensive crops. Water intensive crops like paddy, sugarcane, cotton, wheat, these are very water intensive crops. It needs excess amount of this irrigation facilities, and these irrigation can be done from the surface water, that is from the lake, ponds, rivers, or from the groundwater in the form of the tube wells or wells. Okay, so excessive irrigation, especially of the water intensive crops, that is increasing the demand for the surface water as well as the groundwater, thereby reducing the water in the rivers. Around 90% of the surface water in India is used for irrigation. So you can see this is a very alarming number, that out of 100% of the surface water, 90% is utilized in one sector alone. Okay. Next reason for this fall in this surface water, that is river, is the fall in the groundwater table. So try to understand that this is the river. Okay. Try to understand that this is a river, and you consider that this is the groundwater table, and this is aquifers. So aquifers is the rock systems. These are permeable porous rock systems wherein the groundwater is stored. So if the groundwater falls, then what will happen is the surface water which percolates down, and recharge the groundwater table. This fall in the groundwater table will also lead to the down of the surface water. Thereby, this surface water would also fall down. Okay, so how do the groundwater table will fall? The groundwater falls because of over irrigation. When the over irrigation is taking place, especially in the form of the wells or the tube wells, groundwater table is going to fall, and that will make the river level also to fall down. So in order to conserve the river level, okay, what is important, that the groundwater should be conserved. For the conservation of groundwater, several initiatives are in process. Like for example, Atal Bhujal Yojana is there for the conservation of this groundwater only. Then less water intensive crops should be grown, rain fed crops, okay, especially millets. And knowing the significance of millet, 2023 was declared as the International Year of Millets. Another important cause is the deforestation and the climate change. Now, this is also being emphasized here. It is also being emphasized by the World Economic Forum that one of the important factors for the drying of the river in the various parts of the world is climate change. Okay, So deforestation and the change in the land use pattern, that is one factor. But climate change over here emphasized by that of the World Economic Forum, okay, saying that climate change, higher temperature with the global warming, what is happening is frequent extreme weather condition is taking place, the rate of evaporation is increasing, okay, rate of evaporation is increasing, the surface water is getting evaporated, river is a surface water, so the evaporation is taking place of the surface water. Another important factor that is causing the declining or the drying of the river is deforestation and the change in the land use pattern. Consider forest. Forest act as a rain magnet. Forest helps in recharging the groundwater by allowing the surface water to percolate down, and forest also preventing the soil and water conservation or water erosion. Now, if the deforestation is being done, then the amount of the rainfall reduces, the groundwater table accordingly reduces, and the soil and the water erosion, surface erosion of that of the water and the soil, that starts to increase. So, afforestation should be the solution for this. Pollution, especially that of the plastic, because plastic leads to the blocking up of the rivers and thereby reducing the overall carrying capacity of the rivers. Okay, so the plastic that causes choking up, that plastic should be removed, or the urban drainage system should not be directly released into the nearby rivers. Okay, the pollution also lowers the water quality and damage the aquatic ecosystem. Dam construction is one of the major reason for the drying up of the rivers. You consider the river. This is the normal river flow before the construction of the dam. Post dam construction, what happens is the upper riparian region would be having substantial quantity of the water, and the lower riparian region would be having very reduced amount of that of the water. So it is going to create a water divide between the upper riparian and the lower riparian region. Also, the mismanagement of the dam is a major problem. At times, this causes flooding. At times, it causes drying up. Okay. So, river sand mining is another issue. River sand mining. This was also a prelims question with respect to the excessive sand mining. What are the various consequences? So, the river does the job of erosion and transportation and deposition. So, the sand gets deposited along the bed of the river. Okay, and this sand is very, very important, because with the sand, what happens is the speed of the river slows down. When the speed of the river slows down, then the water percolates down and the groundwater gets recharged. Okay, so when the sand is not there, then the river is going to flow very, very fast. When the river is flowing fast, there can be two problems here. One problem is the river will become very violent, and in that case it may cause flooding also. On the other hand, when the groundwater table falls down, the surface water would also fall down. So excessive sand mining, this should be prevented. Okay. Another important reason for this river drying up is this encroachment. Okay, especially construction of the hotels and the resort along the bank of the river in order to attract more and more tourists. Okay, that is choking, that is reducing the normal flow of the river, especially in the flood plain regions. When these constructions are being done, then it reduces the water holding capacity of the river. You can take the case of 2014 Jhelum river flooding, and one of the reasons was the encroachment along the floodplain regions. Okay, and this was mainly to attract the tourist, and that led to the narrowing down of the flow of the Jhelum river, and when there was excess of this rainfall, it caused flooding. So on one hand, it will cause a drying up, and the same issue can also lead to the river flooding. So overall, we understood what are the various reasons. Okay, in the demand, this can also be added, that population, the high population as one of the important reason. Okay, the high population as one of the important reasons. Here in this case, when the population is high, the demand the demand for the water, then this water is not only for the drinking purpose. It could be also for the food processing industries, for the industrial purpose, for the food crops and the irrigation purpose, and the other day-to-day usage. If we look into the overall demand for this domestic usage of the water, it is roughly between 3 to 5%. Okay. So out of 100% fresh water available, 90% in the case of India is used for irrigation, around 5 to 7% is used for the industrial usage, food processing, and 3 to 5% is roughly for the domestic consumption, that includes drinking and other activities. Okay. So in the cities especially, the population is high, the demand is high, and in that context, the river drying up may take place because of that factor also. What could be the impact of here? The river drying up leads to multi-dimensional impact. As I mentioned in the very beginning, that along with the civilization, the aquatic ecosystems is going to get affected, the groundwater table is going to get affected, the forest in the nearby region would be affected. So one of the effect is the river water ecosystem. The entire river ecosystem, aquatic phytoplankton, the zooplankton, the small fish or the big fish, everything will be impacted. Another important impact that is seen is the navigation. River is a very, very important source of this inland navigation. Okay, when the water level falls down in the river, the navigation also becomes very difficult. For example, the Colorado River have fallen down considerably, and Colorado River is one of the most harnessed river with respect to that of the navigation. So the Brahmaputra River have fallen down considerably, and because of that the navigation have been reduced in Brahmaputra River. Then Rhine River, Danube River in the Europe is also facing the same consequences. Tidal power production, that can also be reduced when the water in the river is less, potential energy is relatively less, and the development or the generation of the hydel power projects, that is reduced. For example, in the case of Yangtze River, which is in China, the water level have fallen down. Because of that, the hydel power production have also fallen down, followed by the delta and the mangroves. So delta is the landform on the mouth of the river. When the river flow reduces, the river which is carrying the sediments along with it, that sediment amount will be reduced. So the delta will not be getting sufficient amount of sediments. Okay, and that in turn is going to affect the mangroves also. Okay, mangroves is a very, very important ecosystem, which is very high in terms of the biodiversity. So that entire biodiversity is going to get affected. Another important impact is seen in the irrigation. When the surface water falls down, then the water intensive crops, which needs substantial amount of the water, their productivity is going to fall down. Drinking water availability is going to become very, very difficult. In different parts of the India, the availability of the fresh water is declining, not just India but world across, and because of that the regions are turning out to be water stressed region, water scarce region. Okay, and India, which is a country receiving a substantial amount of this rainfall from the monsoon, is facing the problem of the drying up of the rivers, which in turn is causing the drought-like conditions. The groundwater table in turn can be reduced. The civilization and the culture. You take the case of Mesopotamia civilization. I hope you know where is this Mesopotamia civilization. It is on the bank of this Tigris and Euphrates river. Okay, and recently the World Bank have said that these two rivers have dried up. So you imagine Mesopotamia civilization, which is basically a 4,000-year-old, more than 4,000-year-old civilization, a civilization which was set up on the bank of the river, and you imagine that river is dried up. So what will happen to the civilization today there? Okay. Similarly, this the Ganga river, which is a Himalayan river, is also facing the same consequences, because especially in the summers, in the April and the month of the May, the Ganga river also, some tributaries gets dried up, okay, in spite of being the Himalayan rivers. So rivers are facing this dual problem. One problem is the flood, another problem is the drying up. For example, Nile River, 50% of the time it is prone to flooding, 50% time prone to drying up. On the same hand, Brahmaputra River, in the monsoon, there is a flooding every year in the Brahmaputra, and during the summer, it dries up every year. So this is really a very, very unsustainable method of the civilizations, wherein because of anthropogenic activities, which is causing the climate change, which is causing the change in the landscape pattern, we are facing the consequences of our own actions. Central Water Commissions had said that recently 13 rivers in the month of May 2024 have dried up between the Mahanadi to Pennar River. So, which is very, very alarming, because so far this type of scenario had not happened in the previous few years. Whenever you are giving any solution for any of the issue, first of all, start with the government interventions. For any issue, if it is a major issue, definitely government would have done something about it. So first give a list of the government initiatives. After that, additional some measures can be added. Okay. So here, with respect to the conservation of the river, the very first initiative was the watershed management program. Here in this case, this management program is basically with respect to that of the conservation of the water. The water will be conserved. First, it has to be stored. First, it has to be collected. So the very first place where the water falls is the rainfall, and the region where it is falling, this watershed region, the water conservation can be done there in the form of small artificial ponds. So this is basically the rainwater harvesting method. So this Haryali program is basically with respect to that of the water, first of all, harvesting, then water conservation for several purposes like drinking, irrigation, fisheries, and afforestation. Also, the Atal Bhujal Yojana. Atal Bhujal Yojana was basically aimed at recharging the groundwater table. Okay, as you know, that groundwater depletion is one of the major reasons for the drying up of the river. So, if the groundwater is recharged, the groundwater is conserved, this in turn would help in the conservation of the surface water. Then, National Water Mission. The objective of this mission is to conserve the water, to minimize the wastage, and to ensure more equitable distribution of this water from surplus region to the deficit region, within the state and between the states. Okay, so this is one of the major initiative with respect to water conservation. Then we have the Water Management Index, in which the central government ranked the states with respect to effort or the initiative in the water conservation. Another important initiative is the Mukhyamantri Jal Swavlamban Abhiyan. This is an initiative by the Rajasthan government, okay, wherein the objective is the convergence of various schemes, that is integration of this watershed program, then Manrega and several state schemes into one, so that a collective effort towards water resource conservation can be taken care. Then there are some international initiatives also. For example, the 9th September is celebrated as International River Day. Also, in the case of Nepal, there is a project, that is the Pani project, which is run with the help from the WWF, World Wildlife Fund. The objective is, see, Nepal is basically a Himalayan state. So from the Himalayan rivers, which have a very high potential energy can be generated, but it should not be at the cost of inequitable distribution of the water. So energy planning plus river conservation, that is the initiative of Pani project. And lastly, the Global River Alliance. This is an alliance, this is an initiative by South Asian Institute for Advanced Research and Development. Here, the idea is to conserve river for all, and also to think river differently. Differently over here, it means that not merely conservation, but even the management, the equitable distribution, and sustainable utilization of the river for an overall development. Some additional initiatives can also be given, like the restoration of this water. This can be done by first identifying those areas which have been encroached, and especially the critical regions where this encroachment have taken place, so that the evacuation can be done. This will help in the conservation of the river water. It will prevent the flooding and the hazard, okay, by the river flooding. So this can be an initiative of disaster preparedness. Then traditional water conservation technique like the rainwater harvesting. This is a practice going on in India since the ancient civilization, especially the Indus Valley civilization, wherein currently also it is in practice. For example, making of this artificial ponds like Johar in the Rajasthan, in the Alwar region, started by Dr. Rajendra Singh, which is known as the waterman of India. Technological innovations in the form of micro irrigations, where the drip irrigation and sprinklers will help to use water in a more efficient way, thereby it will conserve the water. Then the remote sensing technology of GIS can aid in monitoring the water resources, and also to implement several initiatives by the government. Also to have this inventories and geo mapping for the water bodies, sustainable groundwater usage, okay, which talks about the regulation and management of the groundwater on the basis of the aquifers mapping. So overall, surface water can be seen, okay, and the level can be measured, and the consequences becomes very much foreseen. Now here in the case of the aquifers, which is responsible for holding the groundwater table, here the mapping of the aquifers cannot be done by the common man. This needs technology. So over here, if we are able to map the aquifers accordingly, this will also help us to know the region which is having substantial water, the region facing the scarcity of the water, and the potential consequences can be avoided. No project can become successful unless there is a community participation on a large scale, and various initiatives like incentivizing the good practices. There should also be the initiative of penalizing for the wastage of the water or the mismanagement of the water. That is the carrot and stick model. And finally, in the conclusion, 3J strategy can be used. Jal Sanchay, which talks about first storage of water. Jal Sinchan, which talks about efficient utilization of water. And Jal Sanrakshan, which talks about conservation of water. So in this way, this issue of drying up of the river can be very well handled, and the substantial amount of content is available to you. This content can be enriched further by any examples if you come across in the newspaper, or any good case studies if you happen to see, and this will be like a ready-made answer for your exam. So the issue, the causes of the issue, the consequences of the impact of the issues, the solutions for the issues, within that first government initiatives and other miscellaneous initiatives can be structured very well, so that from any dimension, if the question come on that specific issue, you are in a position to attempt the question. Another important issue of the river is flooding of the river. Since monsoon is going on and various rivers of India is vulnerable to the flooding because it is in La Nina year. So there is high chances that river flooding can also be one of the question. That in the next video. Thank you, student.